Hi, welcome to Speaking of Music. I'm Rachel Franklin, and I'm a classical and jazz concert pianist, a teacher, and I do a lot of speaking about music. Over the years, I've presented many programs at the beautiful Academy Art Museum in Eastern Maryland. Right now, as I speak, the Academy is closed to the public because of the coronavirus, but that does not mean we are snoozing. Everyone is very busy creating great content for all you art-loving folks out there. A while back, I presented a series at the Academy entitled Art Meets Music. And this video is the first of several return trips I'll be making to dig in with that fascinating subject some more. I want to start with one of my all-time favorite pictures. Have you ever walked into a room and thought, wow, these people are incredibly cool. I have to get to know them. Perhaps I can be like them. Well, that's how I feel about the folks in this portrait. It's called The Family of William Sharp Musical Party on the Thames, and it's by the German artist Johan Joseph Zoffany. He painted it between 1779 and 1781. Nowadays, it lives in the National Portrait Gallery in London. This magnificent work is no less than a celebration of harmony, family harmony, social harmony, and musical harmony. It's a specific genre of artwork known as a conversation piece, which makes sense because clearly they're having great conversations. And actually, I'd like to join in, so let's just see if we can eavesdrop a bit.
The first thing we notice after taking in the elegant tumble of charmingly dressed Sharp family members from the top to the bottom of the frame is all the musical instruments. There's a violin and cello, 2 horns, a wiggly black thing called a serpent, 2 woodwind instruments known as flageolets, a fine-looking stringed instrument, a theorbo, and smack dab in the middle of the painting, a magnificent harpsichord. Well, it might be a harpsichord. Because the painting is quite foreshortened in perspective in order to feature everyone equally, that instrument in the middle might be a smaller keyboard type, perhaps more portable. I mean, they do seem to be outside, don't they? So, where are they?
At what kind of venue would all the members of this delightful group be gathering to play music together? And why hike the keyboard with them? Well, aside from the altered perspective, this is no Disney setting. This is a real family in a real place.
In the background, we see a lovely church. It's called Fulham All Saints Parish Church. And here it is today. It's located by Fulham Bridge on the banks of the River Thames in London, and it's where some of the Sharp family worshipped, close to their family home, Fulham House. You can clearly see the river. So are the Sharps all sitting on the nearest riverbank closest to us? And here's where it gets completely fascinating. As a family, the Sharps clearly have a thing about music. Even their name is musical. But there's something else that makes this family unique. They're not actually gathered on the river bank. They're on their boat. It belonged to them. It's a sailing barge that they named the Apollo, and it's where the Sharp family gave concerts. Lots of concerts. To their friends, associates, wider family, politicians, British and European aristocracy, and even their Majesties King George III and Queen Charlotte, who, by the way, also had themselves painted by Johan Zoffany. The Sharps were a very well-connected family. Their favourite leisure pastime was to set sail on the Apollo up and down the Thames and entertain those on the banks with beautiful music, excellently rehearsed and performed by the Sharps and any musician friends who were on board. And there were always other musicians on board. As long as the weather was clement, the Sharps hosted extended travelling music parties all along the river, with food and drink and conversation and refined company. One of the family, Granville Sharp, kept detailed accounts of who visited and where they sailed.
On the 1st of September, had the honour of receiving their Majesties, the King and Queen, on board the yacht for about an hour. On Sunday, September the 7th, we had sacred music in the evening at Lady Onslow's, Old Windsor, assisted by the Duke of Cumberland, who played the violin. On Monday morning, Lady Onslow, Lady Holland, and a little son, Lord Holland, and Miss Fox came on board. And afterwards, Lady Mary O'Brien, Miss Haviland, Miss Banks, Miss Crewe, and much more company, and stopped to see the race at Runnymede from the quarterdeck. The next morning, Mr. Garrick breakfasted with us. We afterwards took up Mrs. Garrick and her company, etc. At Twickenham, we took up Sir George Pocock and family, Lady Shelburne, Lady Lichfield, the Princess Masserino, her son and daughter, Mr. Cambridge, etc. We had the honour once more to serenade their Majesties at Richmond for a considerable time, till it began to grow dark.
You see what I mean about wanting to get to know them. So, what might they have been playing? We don't have printed programs, but it's a fair guess that their selections probably included music by George Frederick Handel, Thomas Arne, Johann Christian Bach, and others, plus popular songs and military music. Essentially any repertory that was current and classy. Like this lovely little keyboard piece of Handel's called The Harmonious Blacksmith. It's quite possible the Sharps included it in their concerts, and although I don't have an actual harpsichord here, just a humble grand piano, I'm still hoping the Sharps would have permitted me to join them for a spot of chamber music on their boat.
So, how did Johan Zoffany come to paint this remarkable family? As an artist, he was internationally successful, and as we've just seen, was commissioned to paint portraits at the very highest levels of society. He was a master of the grand public conversation piece, and many people wanted themselves immortalized by his brush. However, Zoffany himself had a rather jaundiced view of some of his clientele, and sometimes found ways to subtly ridicule them, whilst ostensibly celebrating their important social positions. This huge picture, the Tribuna of the Uffizi, is his most famous work, filled with famous society figures admiring some of the great treasures of the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. But somehow, Zoffany manages to depict three well-known gentlemen of the time ogling the Medici Venus on the wrong side. Zoffany even hides himself away in the top left corner of the picture, sporting an inscrutable smile. This mixed reputation didn't seem to put the Sharp family off. Zoffany was commissioned to paint them in all their musical sailing glory by William Sharp, one of the four brothers shown on the boat. The Sharps weren't just wealthy, well-connected music lovers. Their assorted professions included the church, law, engineering, ironmongery, medicine, and various other intellectual occupations. They were campaigners for social justice, and Granville Sharp was particularly famous for his ongoing fight to abolish slavery in the UK and beyond. Let's do a partial who's who.
I told you I wanted to get to know them, so I found a way to sneak into the picture. As you see, I now have a hat, which I hope will make me acceptable, particularly to the elegant ladies here, because hats! So amid all the children, wives, instruments and pets in this picture, there are 7 Sharp siblings here. Starting here, we have James, the engineer. He's the one playing the serpent. Their sister Elizabeth has command of the harpsichord, while Judith holds some music. Over here, we have John, the Archdeacon of Northumberland. And here we have Frances and her fabulous theorbo. And now we get to William, standing at the tiller, waving his hat in delight. As I mentioned, William was the sibling who commissioned this portrait. He was an excellent doctor, and he was surgeon to King George III. And here, leaning towards Elizabeth, is Granville Sharp. Granville was one of the earliest campaigners against slavery in Great Britain. Granville and William became involved in the abolitionist movement through William's medical treatment and support of an abused and escaped slave, Jonathan Strong. Granville subsequently successfully defended Strong in court against his owner. As a family, the Sharps supported the abolitionist movement, and Granville began publishing detailed moral and legal arguments against slavery. He's particularly famous for defending an escaped slave named James Somerset. And Somerset's successful case was one of the key events that eventually led to the abolition of slavery in the UK. Granville went on to chair the Society for Effecting the Abolition of the Slave Trade.
There's a monument to Granville Sharp in Westminster Abbey, and you can find his tomb in the churchyard of Fulham Church alongside his brother William and his sister Elizabeth. So, finally, back to our painter Johan Zoffany. He sets the Sharps inside a beautiful triangular composition within the gentle romantic landscape, and he designs internal shapes that embrace them and their instruments. He clearly held this family in very high regard. Their expressions are dignified but warm. Their body language is close and compassionate. Their love and respect for each other guide Zoffany's composition. They project values of kindness, commitment to intellectual and cultural curiosity, and pleasure in wholesome artistic pursuits. William himself is almost exuberant with pleasure in the company of his family on his beautiful boat. Celebrating family harmony by depicting them playing chamber music together was certainly not new. Families had been choosing to demonstrate their familial devotion through paintings of music making for several centuries. Music in portraiture was understood to be an allegory of marital devotion. But Zoffany clearly understood that William Sharp was seeking to send a message about his beloved family that went beyond the standard group setting of happy musicians.
The great Enlightenment German poet Goethe wrote, "A man should hear a little music, in order that worldly cares may not obliterate the sense of the beautiful which God has implanted in the human soul." To me, Zoffany's portrait tells of how committing oneself to the beauty and perfection of music equates to the beauty and perfection of being human. By projecting the innate decency and goodness of these avid players, Zoffany and Sharp are urging us to look for the sacred in each of us through music and to bring its joy to the wider world. Music will make your life better.
At the bottom of the picture, Zoffany includes his own dog, happily resting at Judith Sharp's feet. Dogs were almost always seen in art as symbols of fidelity, so I think that says something too. Right now, there are a lot of folks who are needing to stay home together and have found ways to be joyful through music. YouTube is full of gyrating grandparents grooving with their families in the kitchen. I think the Sharp family have found a way to be as entertaining and relevant now as they were back in 1781. And if you can do that on a boat, so much the better.